Hello and welcome to the Chat Lounge, where we discuss hot issues in a more laid-back manner. I'm Yun. We are bringing you this special episode from the Bund in Shanghai, the city hosting the annual China International Import Expo. Here with us today are Rodrigo Zeidan, Associate Professor of Practice of Business and Finance from York University Shanghai, and Xu Qinduo, Senior Fellow of the Beijing-based think tank Pangoal Institution. A warm welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Thank you, too.
So, as this year's China International Import Expo is drawing to a close, so let's start with you, Qinduo. What's your feeling, or how would you evaluate this year's event and your first experience of this expo?
Well, I'm impressed very much by this, the business community catching up with Chinese national pledge to peak carbon dioxide emission by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. You can see, either it's the logistic companies or the consulting firms or the auto sector. There's a special zone being established for this exhibition that is to demonstrate your technology and also for environmental protection for low carbon practice there. They all provide either advice or a plan or a solution to produce manufacturing in the low carbon manner to reduce the emission. That's very impressive, I would say.
Any exciting moment in the whole?
I can see that there are a lot of complaints at COP26. Remember, people see there's the speed is too slow and there's a lack of a specific action. But here in the CIIE, I'm actually you feel warmed, you feel encouraged. Well, we do have a lot of action, specific targets, specific technologies, specific plans, for zero emission architecture, for example. In all these efforts, you can see it with your own eyes. Clearly, they are available there. It's really how to translate those technology, those advice into real manufacturing, into real different industrial sector, so we can reduce the carbon dioxide emission in a collective manner. From the government's point of view, from the industrial point of view, from daily lives, we can all work together for the same goal, that is reduction carbon dioxide emission. So in that sense, I would say, if you look at it 2030, 2060, I'm pretty confident that, China will achieve the goal.
And Rod, you've been living in this city for some 5 years. And what's your observation of this year's event? Have you found any, exciting changes over the past 3 years, actually?
Well, Shanghai is a lively city. I remember friends of mine, and I'm like, with the COVID, and like, I would like to visit you in Italy, but I can't visit you right now because we can travel. I said, don't worry, like, if you come in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, like, Rome is going to be the same. Like, it has been the same for 2,000 years. Shanghai changes, right? When I arrived in China for the first time, the Shanghai Tower behind us didn't exist. Also, one thing that people don't understand, people from abroad don't understand, is that an expo like this, on a country that already imports something like $2 trillion, it's like, it may seem like overkill, but it's not, because it's ingrained in the fabric of the national targets, as you were mentioning. It's a place where this is how the economic model, not model, but the economic system changes. Like, the expo is a representation of the goals for the future. In that sense, Shanghai continues to develop, is already a rich city and is becoming richer. And the expo is one of the major events, and by now is consolidated as one of the major business events in the city of Shanghai, and should continue to prosper in the next few years.
And in terms of the expo itself, have you found any, changes?
Well, that is the COP26. That is hard for me because that is the most important change, right? The environmental goals and changing the focus are like, okay, let's create incentives for businesses to compete on how to supply solutions for lower carbon economy, that matters. On the other hand, of course, you have the situation that it cannot be as big as in the past because people cannot travel. So in a way, you must make the expo with people who are already here. And that is a change. What is impressive is that the expo can be a success even in these very challenging times. That is what is impressive. That is an important event that went ahead, and it didn't just continue to exist just because, okay, we did it last year, we have to do it this year just because. No, it has a purpose, it has a goal, and that is what I find impressive for the CIIE.
Yeah, like you said, it has its own mission. And actually, one of the goals of the CIIE since its launch in 2018 is to share the vast market opportunities here in China with the rest of the world. So from your observation, how have the organizers done this time, Qinduo?
Well, that probably one point to not only in general, as a developing country with a vast market, people tend to think, when we import, often is the goods and services, products from more developed world or resource-rich countries, right? But if you look at the expo, at least for this year's expo, you will see there's a lot of developing countries, or there are 90 companies, I believe, from the least developed countries. Basically, people would say, yeah, the poor from the global south, poor countries, they sent their companies here with assistance for the Chinese side. This is the one way. I have to say that the Chinese we believe like a trade investment can provide solution to a lot of issues. For example, poverty, development, because with more investment from outside and with export to the outside, you can make some money, you can make the reserve, and then you can have some more investment. Will be more able to do investment in the necessary areas. For example, education. This is for long-term development. Infrastructure for long-term development. But if you don't have this foreign reserve, have the money, and it would be more challenging. So in this way, China would welcome, and it took action to help those countries, to have a booth, to have a presence of your company, of your special products or services or whatever you have. Bring it here and see. To meet the potential purchaser, potential business partner, so you can establish a long-term relationship with the market, and in that sense, you can find a way to develop your own economy. Of course, improve the people's livelihood. Yeah.
Right. Picking up from what you said about those developing countries and those least developed countries, I noticed that Afghanistan, for this time, they got only 3 booths here at the CIIE, but they've got a huge import of pine nuts. There are moving stories, right?
Yeah.
That I myself actually purchased one can of the nuts on when this e-commerce live stream went on there. Besides Afghanistan, we've got also Russia, Pakistan.
Yes.
And Rod, have you heard of any stories like that during this, over the past 7 days?
So I'm less concerned about these individual stories than I am trying to put into context the fact that China is going through a great rebalancing. So the economy, up until a few years ago, 50% of GDP was investment, like real estate and things like that. But China, as it's now an upper middle income country, and as it continues to grow, it will become a service economy. That is the shape of a rich economy.
Right.
And for that to happen, the imports, the quality, the quantity, and there will be a shift from pure like commodities imports, including pine nuts, which is important for poor countries, to also more quality products. The Chinese consumers are becoming a huge force in global markets, way beyond the indirect effects of things like soybeans or iron ore for building apartments. Consumers are going to get more sophisticated products from abroad. And sophisticated in that sense will not be necessarily luxury goods. This, of course, when people get rich for the first time, you want branded things and stuff like that, but you quickly grow out of it. But as the economy becomes more sophisticated, there will be such a huge shift into the goods that China imports. And that is going to be, and that is what I feel that the Expo can trigger, can help in this process of changing the landscape, in the changing landscape of imports in China.
Let me add, to what Rodrigo has said, that, exactly that's the case. Basically, I think the Chinese consumers, people sometimes say they are very demanding. They are obviously hoping for these top quality services, products,
right.
Goods. It's not about these high-end products. It's also about, for example, healthy products. Like this organic food from some of the developing countries. That's very welcome in the China market because people are paying more attention to about the health issue. And also if you look at this senior care sector market, because this country, the population is aging rapidly. And the Japanese companies see the niche market in China because they have more experience, better equipment, and also some of them are successful practice.
Right.
They want to export to the China market. So that is also, again, you can say high-end services and equipment for the China market. So it's a variety of sophisticated markets, products and services here is needed.
Yes, indeed. Actually, take Brazil, Rod's home country as an example. China has been importing a lot of high-quality meat from you, right? And Brazil has become, latest figures show that Brazil has become the #1 country, source country of imported food for China last year. And food imports from Brazil actually soared over 80% to more than $9 billion US. So from your perspective, how do you think Brazilian products, what make Brazilian products so popular here in China?
So at the end of the day, international trade is about specialization. The countries specialize in the things that they are good at. China is 1.4 billion people. Even though it's a little bit bigger than Brazil in terms of territory, the land that is available for agricultural products is much lower and of much lower quality. So at the end of the day, Brazil will import agricultural goods, including meat, which right now there is a trade dispute because China has stopped importing meat from Brazil for like some months now. Hopefully this is going to be resolved.
That's a contributing factor.
Yes. So, but that also shows how important it is. What people don't understand is that in the first decade of the century, a lot of economic growth around the world was because of China's ascension from the WTO in 2001. And the fact that we even had a term for that in economics called the commodity super cycle.
Right.
It is, for instance, Australia was the country with the longest period without a recession, 25 years, mostly because it benefited the most from access to the Chinese markets. And also, like Brazil actually exports a lot of specific energy products like from mining. And that is, at the end of the day, that is what matters for countries like Brazil or Russia or Pakistan, the ones that are mentioned. Like, there are a lot of opportunities in the sense that China is big, but China cannot produce everything efficiently. And especially land-intensive goods or some types of industrial goods, even if China is very good at producing industrial goods, it cannot produce everything. There is a lot of opportunities for countries like Brazil, Pakistan, Russia, and poor and middle-income countries to sell to China.
Yeah, indeed. As you said, the opportunities are there. But as China is Chinese consumers upgrade their consumption mold. So how do you think business people, especially from the developing and least developed countries, can, utilize this opportunity? Rod?
So at the end of the day, business in Brazil, business around the world, exporting is hard. It's a different business. And that's what is not simply saying, oh, okay, I've welcomed, I remember a group of Brazilian entrepreneurs that came to China. They wanted to meet me, and they said, oh, can you tell us how we can sell $100 million into China? It doesn't work like that. It's growing very much. China imports $2 trillion. But it's not just a question of, oh, there's a lot of money in China, so it's easy to export to China. It doesn't work like that. That's why the expo exists, because knowledge to lower the transaction costs of the business opportunities. And that is also a lesson for these countries, is like, what is it that you're doing to lower the transaction costs to export to China? China's announcing to the world, here, we are open to business. We want to import. Our consumers want to buy good quality products or healthy products. We need to shift away from coal. We need to buy goods that are healthier, organic. You need to prove to us that your goods are good, that the quality, that you are organic, that your coffee is fair trade. And that's where I think that poor countries, and that's why they are poor sometimes, is that they miss these opportunities. They believe that they are going to compete just on price. And I think that is also a lesson from the Import Expo, is the fact that it's going to be more than just price. It's not going to be a competition just on price. The quality is going to matter a lot. And that is a lot of quality products in emerging markets that do not make the trip to China yet. And that is what I think is the biggest opportunity.
That's right. And also, if you look at the Expo, you would wonder, why China is hosting such an event. Basically, quite unique, I would say. China is the only country that hosts such a big event to introduce, services, goods from other countries to the potential Chinese consumers. And then it's really about, of course, it's for Chinese interests, because China is aiming to build a consumption-driven economy, relying less and less on investment and export, because consumption-driven economy is believed to be more sustainable, more stable, more long-term. Okay, that's good for China. But what can you do, in what way can you do it? One way is to organic way, right? Business people will travel, will see, oh, there's an opportunity in China. I can, sell some of my product sales and, services to China. It's a natural way of development. Usually it takes a long time, probably. But now you have this expo, this big event, and then if any business people or companies, they are looking at the China market, they say, I want to find out if there's a percentage of a share of the market I can take, then it's good for my business. So I want to try. So this is a good opportunity for those business people, for those countries, to have a presence, to promote your products, your goods, your services, your produce here directly to Chinese potential customers of their buyers here. So this is why it is important for countries, in particular for developing countries, to showcase your products here. And of course, as Rodrigo obviously pointed out, very rightly, it's not only about the price. It's also about the quality.
Right.
You have competitors. And also it's a chance to know your competitors. Remember, there are a lot of similar products and services. You are all in the same place, same venue. You can take a look at that, how competitive my service is compared to my competitors. So how can I improve? So how can I meet the Chinese demands, right? And for example, the wine market, in a sense, is very competitive. You have high-end wines from European countries, from Australia, you have from Chile, from California, and then you have wine from Serbia, from Azerbaijan. In China, it's not that well known. So, but of course, there's still you can have a market share. It's really how to promote and how to introduce your products to Chinese consumers and to attract that percentage of consumers, so you will have a presence, and which might grow stronger and stronger.
But for some countries like Afghanistan, who doesn't have this kind of advantage of direct transport, especially when they're in war, direct transport would be a luxury for them. They have to make some detour via the third country to ship their goods to China. But even they have this high quality products like handmade carpets, it's hard for them to lower their costs, right? How can what can they do to improve their situation or lower their costs to make it more affordable to Chinese consumers, Rod?
So and that's where the Import Expo comes in, and that are diplomats and the trade people, the people who are here that are officials from these countries. That's their responsibility, right? That's why we have trade representatives all over the world. They should lower these transaction costs. At the end of the day, the Import Expo provides an opportunity. Yeah. You have suppliers in Afghanistan that have good quality products. You have consumers here and competitors, as you well put it. It's absolutely perfect, the competitors there. It's like, if you have a competitive product, you have to prove it, right? And I would take wine as an example, since it's you brought it. There are two forces at play. On the one hand, Chinese consumers have learned that wine from France is supposed to be good. And it's hard for any other country to break into the market because there is some loyalty to French wine. At the same time, Chinese consumers are willing to explore to a much larger extent than consumers from other countries. For instance, I was eating, I bought one potato chips which were Bloody Mary flavored. Like, who puts Bloody Mary, which is an alcoholic drink, as a flavor on a potato chip, right? But that is Chinese consumers want to try. And yes,
very brave.
I was brave as well, right? But Chinese consumers are brave, right? So, and there is this like, okay, we were poor, so price used to be our determinant, right? A carpet from Afghanistan, it takes too long, it's too expensive, we cannot afford it. But you look behind us, and you're going to see that these consumers are not lacking in money. So maybe they're going to look at a carpet from Afghanistan, they're going to look, this is beautiful. Yes, I can buy it on Taobao for like 1/5 of the price.
Right.
But first of all, I don't have a history behind it. I cannot say that it's handmade, but like I can see that is a beautiful pattern now, a pattern that maybe the machine here can replicate, but the design is Afghanistani. So you're not going to get it. Right? And that's where the opportunities are. And that requires that Chinese consumers learn as well. But this is a dynamic process, right? You need competitors, you need suppliers, you need government officials, and you need consumers that are willing to try. And that is the beauty about being in China and learning that consumers here are willing to try.
Yeah, and also is resilience. I want to use this word to describe this the business community. Despite this pandemic, which is still waging in many countries, a challenging situation to basically bring in your goods from a country like Afghanistan. This is very challenging because it's not a 100% stable, peaceful. There are still a lot of problems in that country. Taliban-driven led government. So the story of one booth demonstrating this Afghan carpet, this young man, the boss, in his 20s, I believe. He basically transported his carpets to Istanbul,
yes.
And then from Istanbul
long
flew
journey.
them to Shanghai. It's a detour, it's a long journey. But I think finally, at the end of the day, it will pay off because he will help create this brand awareness of carpets from Afghanistan with a variety of patterns, handmade and top quality material from Afghanistan. So as long as he can build a small community, loyal consumers to consume, to purchase, for example, for their own use or as a gift to their friends, of course, we have a 400 million strong middle-class consumers here. Some of them are very high-end consumers. They are not price sensitive. They would say, as long as it is top quality products, okay, that's fine, I will get it. They don't care about how much, really. So in that sense, if he can explore and tap this percentage of consumers or this part of this market, I would say it will be successful. And then, once you start this business, it will grow gradually. You establish this channel from Afghanistan to China. Gradually, probably the whole process will be easier and simpler, and then the cost will also be reduced.
Right.
In that sense, you'll become more competitive.
Yeah, that sounds very feasible. And since the expo has been a platform for many companies to debut their latest innovations, because China is actually pursuing high quality development featuring higher efficiency, less waste, lower emission rate. What are your findings in this regard? Have you found any exciting, innovations at the expo?
For example, one of the global consulting firm, I wouldn't name their name.
Right.
I was surprised to see that at this kind of slogan, like we are driving into a greener future. It's like they are having a new mission of their whole consulting service. That is to help the company, their customers, to do your business in a way you can achieve carbon neutrality, in a way you can produce lower emissions, in a way, remember in China there's a quota, there's a requirement from the governments basically at every level, every sector that you should reduce, you are expected to reduce your emission. Certain quota, certain percentage every year. So you need to achieve your goal, achieve your targets, and you need help. You need advice, you need a design, you need a solution. And this consulting firm said that we are here to provide that kind of service. So that's kind of a surprise for me. Usually they provide the services like, oh, how can I make you help you to make more money, right? to sell your products, to create this brand awareness, etc., to strengthen your presence, your business. But now their priority obviously has shifted to this green concept here. And if you look at this logistic companies, I believe there's one company, basically the whole booth, all the material, that will achieve carbon neutrality. At the end of this exhibition, they said zero emission. So that's a demonstration of how committed the companies are to this overall goal of national goal of China. This is China, right? If there's a goal, the governments will look at the goal, how to achieve that in terms of policy making, and then different industry sectors, they will look at that, how they can meet their requirements. So I would say this is very encouraging to see that.
Let me,
yes.
Can I compliment that?
Yes.
It's very well put. And I think that is one thing that people who are not in China don't understand, which is the fact that these goals matter. Like when you have an import expo and you say, oh, like the import expo should have consulting companies achieving carbon neutrality. You gotta say, oh, like you go to these fairs in many countries that are gonna have. This is just what we call greenwashing, right? This is just something that companies say that they want to do, or oh, this is just lip service to the government. Sometimes, or to that. Is right. Like here. You can try to do lip service, but at the end of the day, you're going to be measured on that.
Yeah.
And it's important mostly because this is not only a Shanghai expo, right? This is an expo for the whole of China. When you have third-tier cities or poor provinces, they, in a way, that they're going to have a harder task because they are going to try to catch up with Shanghai. They're going to try to catch up with China and with but they cannot take the same path. And an import expo like this shows that, look, your companies, they will not be able to import this, say, coal-heavy, this unhealthy products. In the past, yes, like some other provinces could do that, but that was the past, right? And now those are the constraints. And this expo is also a place where companies learn what are the constraints, what are the rules that we must follow moving forward. And that matters a lot in China. They may not matter a lot in Denmark or Scandinavia, where, okay, like the companies cannot import coal because this has been decided 30 years ago. These rules change in China quickly, and in the case especially of the environmental rules, they are changing for the better. Now the question is, how much will companies try to greenwash their way out of it? How much they're going to try, oh no, like we're making money selling this, we don't want to change. Okay, it's fair enough. Like that is your goal, to try to make as much money as possible. But you come here and you look at it and say, oh, by the way, that supplier they're used to dealing with, he's not allowed in anymore. Because this type of goods, their tariffs are 80% because we consider them to be too polluting. So now you must survive without access to that supplier. So how do you do?
It's not only for promotional purpose, for brand, like furnishing your image, right? It's really about, okay, now you do your talk. Now you walk your walk. Because at the end of the day, the companies, the cities here in China, you have to bring out the concrete results of reducing your carbon emission, one way or another.
Right. Well, it's not just green development or high quality development that matters to the expo or to the entire country. The expo is also designed to promote openness of China, right? And a report on world openness was released over the past few days during this expo, and it found China's openness level actually went up. Its ranking went up from the 62nd in 2008 to some 40th place in 2019, while the United States, which used to be on the top, dropped to 22nd place. So what does that say to you? Has the expo actually facilitated a lot of China's openness level?
Well, I would, for China, the openness, if you look at the international stories, often there is a question like whether China is continuing the path of opening up to the outside world, whether China is continuing to reform itself to increase this, in every aspect, especially to get better. But the thing is, this is a national policy. If there's one national consensus here in China, from the very top of the Chinese leadership to the public here, that is, we have to be open, because our history shows that, every time when we remain open, the country will be prosperous. There will be stability. There will be development. If we close our door, and then we tend to be more conservative, tend to see like a slow growth and more problems of the society, more challenges for the government. So I think no problem but that. Often I think the question is misplaced, because requires like understanding of the big picture. China often follows its own pace of reforming its particular sector, its overall national development, or opening up a certain sector. Sometimes people are impatient. People see, I would love to see the change like overnight, right? But that's understandable.
That's impossible.
But that's not impossible. So if you look at the issue long-term point of view, you understand that China is opening further and further. So there's no question about that. And also, along with that, it's really about the ease of doing business. Shanghai is a good example. Shenzhen, for example, I would say Chinese leader like President Xi Jinping, he personally cared about the ease of doing business, not only for the Chinese business, small firms, medium-sized firms, but also businesses from overseas. If they have a presence in China, they're doing business. Is it convenient? Is it easy? If they feel easy, they love to invest more in China. And if you look at the foreign direct investment for China, first half of this year, China tops the world. So that means more money are flowing in this country. Why? Because think this is opportunity. They love to do business here. So it's really up to every country, whether you want to make yourself as an attractive destination of FDI, and that ultimately serves your interest, right? Or you can, take some measures, probably, showing somehow you're giving out this signal that some of the businesses are not welcome to do investment here, like the U.S. situation. I think partly because of the U.S. Trump period, the taking this America first principle, and the trade war with China, they basically said no to quite a number of investment from the Chinese side, from other countries. So probably that's why they are lowering their ranking in terms of the global openness index.
Sorry, go ahead.
Of course, like the U.S. started a trade war, so of course their ranking will be lower. I will also, like in the question of rankings, I would like to also put it a little bit into context, because it's a little bit hard for people to understand.
Sure.
First of all, rankings matter more for emerging countries than for rich countries, right? Because the US is rich in partly because it has been at the top of the list forever. And it's not going to be falling down to 20 that is going to matter. And it's like it's the policy of a government that created a trade war that is being unwinded. But they matter for a poor country that is trying to get rich. So being open, as you mentioned, matters. However, we also have to be careful because there is a limit to how much China can climb the rankings. China will never be at the top of the rankings. I'm going to give you a very simple example, and it shouldn't. And that is the point. And the reason is because there are many reasons for that. First is national interest. Many sectors will remain closed because of political decisions. And we can discuss if these political decisions are good or bad. Many of them are good. But you're not going to have some sectors open, which means that there's a limit to how much you're going to climb the rankings, right? I'm going to give you a very practical example from consumer side. In the US, American consumers can pretty much bring into the country whatever they want up to $800. So you want to buy a suit from an Italian tailor, you have it shipped to your home in the US, you don't pay any taxes, you don't pay any tariffs if it is up to $800. That's not the case in China. If I import a pair of shoes, I will pay 20% tariff, which is actually much lower than Brazil. But this is not going to go away. China will not remove these tariffs, and it shouldn't. And it shouldn't for many reasons, including common prosperity, which is a political goal. So there is a limit to how much China is going to climb the rankings. The other is the correlation between rankings and what the rankings are trying to achieve. When a country is opening up, as you mentioned very, very, very well, when a country is opening up because it's looking for a certain goal, which is more investment and more prosperity, and it climbs the ranking, that is what the ranking is about, and that's when the ranking is well used, and that's exactly when you should have it. However, a ranking can be just we need to climb the rankings to make political news. And this way, you're like, okay, so we're gonna lower the tariff of this product because we know that this product, if we lower the tariff, this is gonna give us the ranking. But we actually don't know if lowering the tariff of this product is gonna be good for the country. You're just doing that to climb the rankings. Right. Then that's not good, right? So that is a limit to how much we should read into rankings. And the doing business ranking, for instance, that is the big scandal of the World Bank, and we don't need to go into that. But that shows the limit of rankings. But yes, the US is not as open as it was. It started a trade war. So how can we be at the top of a ranking if you start a trade war, right? And as China develops, it should improve the rankings. But there will come a point and that is the point what is politically difficult, because this is a political decision. We must have a plan to stop climbing the rankings. This is the level of openness that we want. And at that point, doesn't matter what countries here want to do, we don't want to be the top. China doesn't want to be the top the most open country in the world. It shouldn't want this. It's 1.4 billion people. Like there is a huge welfare effect, what we call in economics. There is a huge economic consequences if you try to be too open too soon,
right.
completely open too soon.
But from your understanding, why is the Chinese government and the leadership is always, promoting or this idea or saying that China will be more open?
It should be more open. It should climb the rankings up to a point. But there is a limit to that. But yes, China should be more open. And that is my fear, actually. Sometimes when you look at all this happening at the same time, and that's another reason why the Import Expo is very good. Because it shows, no, like there are some areas that you may argue that we are not opening up. But look at that. We are doing an Import Expo to show that we want to be open. And that's why it matters so much.
In what areas do you think China should be more open?
So it's complicated. Like for instance, for FDI, a lot of FDI is restricted in China, right? And up to, for instance, up to a few years ago, I think it was 2015, wholly foreign-owned enterprises were not allowed into China. This is a question, shouldn't we want a little bit more foreign companies in China? They promote competition, right? You have a multinational company, the local companies must follow. If you have, shouldn't you want solar or wind energy companies from Denmark to set up business in China fully owned? Because I'm sure that if for some reason they in the sea right here, if a Danish company puts a lot of windmills for wind energy, this is going to be good. Right.
What about the financial sector, since you're a professor of practice business and finance?
That is a very complicated, this is the most difficult part. And the reason for that is, for instance, China has capital controls, right? People are not free to move their money out of in China. And this is not bad. For instance, when you have the global financial crisis in 2008, China is not affected to the same extent that other countries are because the crisis because the Chinese financial system is relatively insulated from the rest of the world, the crisis cannot come into China from the financial side, right? And at the end of the day, in 2010, the global recovery was driven by China because China was able to grow fast because its financial sector was unaffected by the crisis. This plays out again during COVID. You have COVID, you have a huge confidence crisis. This may turn into a financial crisis. No, in China it can't because the financial system is insulated. You have it again this year with the Evergrande real estate issue, in which you have this fear that the collapse of this huge company is going to create financial chaos because this company is dealing with 120 banks. No, we don't need to worry about that. Yuan denominated debt, the PBOC, the People's Bank of China, can take care of that. So, but China, at the same time, China wants to have the yuan as an international currency. But you cannot have it both ways. You cannot have the yuan as an international currency and have an insulated financial system at the same time. And the insulated financial system in China serves some very good purposes. But yes, at the same time, because you don't have these financial companies coming into China, the financial markets in China are not as sophisticated as they could be.
So generally speaking, you actually agree with the pace of China's reform or opening up of its financial sector?
I don't think it's a problem. I would maybe a little bit more open, but the pace is not a problem. It is actually reverted, right? China was going very open until 2014-15, when China had $4 trillion of reserves. They fell by $1 trillion in a year because of huge outflows, and then China closed capital controls again. I don't have a problem with that. That is not what is going to prevent China from becoming a rich country. Yes, on the margin, there are efficiency effects of having a closed economy to some sorts of FDI, but that is not the problem. That is not the main issue.
Well enough.
It's a very good point. For developing countries, if you say there's a poor country, with a lot of resources. But the thing is, like, if you don't have your locally run companies or businesses, and then it's all foreign-owned firms, wholly foreign-owned firms, and then there's no local competitors, and like 10, 20 years later, you would find that it's all foreign business, and you don't have your own business. So that's why, in a sense, for the joint ventures, as a foreign partner with a local partner, they work together. In that way, actually, this is the way of training the local business people to pick up some of the skills, like business skills, and to open their mind to the outside world, to learn to improve their own business. In that way, you can develop your economy as one of, I would say competitiveness is getting stronger and stronger. Otherwise, basically, your whole country will be overwhelmed with these foreign companies. That happened to many countries, actually. It's usually ending in a disaster. So it's a measured openness, a gradual openness, and of course also you take into consideration of your own interests. Whether this kind of openness is a level openness, you need this level openness, or whether this openness will somehow bring more hurts than benefits, say, from this involvement there. So it's a sophisticated decision-making process, and it requires a lot of deliberation, I would say. Not only the governments, but also experts, professors. We have to contribute ideas and take a closer look at where is our interest, what we are going, which direction we are moving, and how far we want to go.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's like driving. You need some exquisite moves or maneuver to make the concise or exact or precise execution to make it a safe drive, right? Let's talk a little bit about the impact of the CIIE on Shanghai itself. I think it's fair to say Shanghai is the most internationalized metropolis here in China, at least. So, Rod, in what way has the expo been, reshaping the city of over 26 million people?
Yes, it's an amazing city. I love living in Shanghai. And as you mentioned, the Import Expo forces a concentration of foreign people in Shanghai, in a city that they are comfortable in, that they can go to restaurants, that they can take the subway, that all signs are in English. It doesn't mean that the Import Expo, the CIIE, would not do well if it were in a third-tier city, but it wouldn't be as easy on the people, and it wouldn't be as easy on the integration of the Import Expo with the local fabric of the businesses here. In other words, let me give you one practical example of how this reinforces each other. The Import Expo comes, so a business bureau from a country says, we now must open up a business bureau in Shanghai because this Import Expo is going to happen every year. That brings foreign people here, that brings their families. So when a trade mission from that country comes into China, they of course are going to be hosted there, right? Their kids are going to go to schools in Shanghai. And that makes the city more dynamic over time, makes the city more international over time. And that is a question also what the city wants. Does the city want to be a global metropolis? Does it want to play the role of, here, we want to be the international city in Shanghai? I think it does. Well, I am at NYU Shanghai, right? It would be very bad for me if I said I really fully believe that the government is behind Shanghai being an international city. So events that creates ramifications inside the city are the best type of events for that to happen.
And also remember domestically, if you look at the number of the purchaser, using a simpler term, purchaser could be the Chinese, retail company or wholesale business owner, and also joining this expo are from the local governments or city councils. These have the trade officials in charge of foreign trade. They would come to Shanghai to take a look, what we can purchase, what we can learn. from Shanghai. And I think for a lot of Chinese citizens, they look up to Shanghai, right? They learn from Shanghai, including this efficient and effective management of COVID-19. Shanghai is doing the best. So, hosting such a big event itself is a huge challenge for any country. But Shanghai is doing a wonderful job. In particular, at the time of pandemic control, with all those, it's getting more complicated. But still, you can see this is well organized with efficiency and also with safety. You have to take that both into consideration.
Right, but it seems Shanghai is never satisfied with what it has achieved. It's like good students always think, how am I going to improve myself?
Right.
How can I be better? So, over the last few days, the top leadership of the Shanghai municipal government actually came up with some decision pledging to take the lead in adopting major opening up strategic measures in line with high standard international economic and trade practices. So what messages do you get there?
I think Shanghai basically, if you look at the opening up, the free trade zone, for example, some of these opening up measures or policies is being tested in Shanghai. Shanghai is the city as a pilot zone, to try whether this policy does it work or does it work for the purpose, as we planned, and whether there will create a pressure. Can we stand up to the pressure? Whether this experience is successful, whether it can be promoted to the rest of the country. So Shanghai is undertaking such an important mission. Remember, China is applying to join CPTPP, which is generally recognized as a high standard free trade pact. It requires some of the toughest reform on the Chinese side. For example, subsidies, state-owned companies, etc., intellectual property rights protection. Shanghai could be the region to test all those next step reforms here. If it succeeds in Shanghai, and then the nationwide, we can promote it, and then that will make China ready to meet the requirement of CPTPP, and that will make the Chinese economy more open and more competitive.
Rod, what kind of opportunities actually you see here in Shanghai and also in China that we can share with the rest of the world?
I'm gonna steal one of your points, because your point is amazing. It is about risk taking. The Shanghai government is willing to take risks to make Shanghai, because what people don't understand is that who is Shanghai competing with? Shanghai is not competing with New York. First, Shanghai is competing with the other big cities in China. And he wants to say, look, it's very simple. If our competitive advantage is being international, having NYU, having the Import Expo, having all of this infrastructure, like having Pudong Airport, if we don't do it, another city will. And we're going to lose our businesses to Ningbo. We're going to lose our businesses to Nanjing. So, in a way, local authorities, they are looking at, okay, this competitive pressure happens from everywhere. It happens from international cities, but it happens from inside. So when people hear that Shanghai wants to be open in the middle of a pandemic, people might hear is like, this is not going to happen. This is all political talk. No, it's not. Because the Shanghai government understands that this is something that is fundamental to the city. We need to exploit our competitive advantage. And our competitive advantage is in building behind us Lujiazui. And Lujiazui is going to be, the only way there is going to be an international center of finance is if we open free trade zones or free agreements, or like, no, here there are going to be special rules. The capital controls are going to be a little bit limited here, less limited, so companies can bring business. So we can have an aspect trying to come into China and investing in Chinese companies, and we're going to see how that works. That is Shanghai. This spirit that you mentioned very well, this spirit of never being satisfied, is how politicians here measure success. We don't measure success by our GDP today. We measure success by how much is it going to increase every year? How much am I going to bring in terms of development to my city? So it's not about having 18 subway lines. It's about what is going to be the 19th, what is going to be the 20th. And there may be some limits to some of it, but not right now. Shanghai is not at that level in which it's reaching any kind of limit. And there are plenty of opportunities for like the whole world. China imports $2 trillion a year. There's a lot of opportunities, and if Shanghai doesn't work to take up these opportunities, other cities will.
Right. Qinduo, very briefly, what kind of new opportunities do you see here?
In Shanghai?
Yes.
Well, I would see all the opportunity. Shanghai is culturally, people describe Shanghai as where the East meets the West. So I would say this means openness to the domestic, the rest of the country, openness to the outside world. And Shanghai, remember there's an article covered by international media outlets. They say the 50 reasons why Shanghai is the greatest city in the world. But people living here, obviously, they have this true experience of why Shanghai is competitive. I mean, from basically all the aspects, you can see why Shanghai is so competitive, and they are working hard to improve upon that.
Let me take one final example. During the pandemic, internal tourism in China exploded, right? After the lockdowns were over, people cannot travel abroad, so they want to buy a luxury good, they come to Shanghai. It would be very easy for the Shanghai government to say, okay, so let's build our whole infrastructure, the whole city, and we're now going to cater to rich Chinese tourists but that's not what the government is doing. They're going to say, oh, this is fine, let's welcome them, let's them buy in their stores, let's them buy luxury goods. But that's not our competitive advantage in the long run. We are like, our hotels are full of tourists that are coming here during the October holiday because they cannot go abroad. That's fine. Like, businesses are making a living out of it. This is absolutely fine. But we cannot, this is not our long run strategy. That's not how we're gonna survive in this international changing landscape. And that's what I really appreciate. The long-term planning of Shanghai authorities is in looking 10 years from now and not saying, okay, we're going to adjust course completely because of the pandemic. Okay, so okay, this is fine. We must adapt a little bit to survive. But no, our opportunities are in becoming an international city. We pursue that, even if right now a lot of our income comes from other Chinese tourists coming to Shanghai. It's fine, good, but that's not enough.
No matter how, come to Shanghai, come to China to share the great actually, business opportunities here. As Chinese philosopher Mencius, known as the second sage after Confucius from over 2,000 years ago, once said, be good on your own when you are poor. Share with the rest of the world when you get rich, or in obscurity, maintain your integrity. In prosperity, make perfect the world. That's also what the theme of this year's China International Import Expo is all about. New era, shared future. So we'll have more stories about it when we come back to Shanghai next year. But for now, it's time to conclude our special edition of Chat Lounge. Thanks to our guests, Associate Professor Rodrigo Zeidan from York University Shanghai and Xu Qinduo of the Pangoal Institution. Please subscribe to the Chat Lounge for free on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. For this special episode, you can also go to Weibo, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Tu Yun, saying thank you for tuning in, and goodbye from Shanghai.